Ooh. All right, we'll see how long this little guy will last. He's going through a growth spurt, so he's been in a mood. What's up, Kirby family? It is just me today. Lucky you guys. But I have been receiving not lots, but quite a bit of questions on my personal birth experience, my postpartum experience, like how Warren's been doing. So even though I was only gonna do Q&As for trimesters of pregnancy, I decided to do one last Q&A for birth/postpartum. So I put on my Instagram story a questionnaire, and for those who put questions in, thank you. So I'm gonna go through and just answer questions on it. Okay, so first, did you ever consider alternate options like home births? Would you choose different in the future? So with that, this is just me personally. I am more comfortable at home, yes. I think I will try to last longer at home next time for sure, but I don't think I'll ever consider home birth just because I'm the overthinker type person. Sorry, if this is like not fun to watch me go back and forth, just trying to keep this one asleep. I have this fear that something will just go wrong during a home birth, not to me, but for a baby, and not being at a hospital with everything that they would need just kind of terrifies me a little bit. So I would be more on edge if I were at home, and so instead of being more relaxed. So I think the comfort of home during labor would be nice, but I would want to deliver in a hospital. So was the epidural painful? So yes, I did get the epidural, and for my personal experience, no, it wasn't painful at all. It literally felt like just any other shot. So shots like the flu shot and whatnot, the vaccine you got, if any of those shots hurt for you, then it would probably be a little painful, but it literally just feels like any other shot that goes into your back. I was so scared to get the epidural knowing it was a bigger needle, but granted, to take into consideration, at this point, by the time I got the epidural, I was already at 10 centimeters and ready to push. I got the epidural knowing that pushing is, from what I've heard, can be the most painful part. So I was like, I want it anyway, even though I wasn't planning on lasting till 10 centimeters. So I lasted the longest. So by the time I was getting the epidural, my, whatever it's called, man, I'm losing words. By the time I got the epidural, I was already in a lot of pain. So my focus was more on that pain. And I knew the person who was doing my epidural, and I trust him a ton, so I wasn't even thinking about it, and he's just a well-known doctor to do it, so he's very, very good at it. So I had a very good doctor, and my mind was also elsewhere with other labor pains, so that could be why it didn't hurt very much. But no, the epidural was not painful at all for me. What's been the hardest part of life with a newborn? I think for me, it was the first night, and then once he hit his 3-week growth spurt. That first night was so hard, mainly because by that point I had not slept more than a total of like 4 hours in the span of 3 days. So my body was just exhausted already. I was up all night because he had his nights and days completely flip-flopped. So he was up all night long, and so my body was just shutting down. It had no rest. It was tired. It was like trying to learn this whole new life, and it was a rough night. Some tears were shed. And then yeah, with his 3-week growth spurt, he's been eating. The other night he was literally awake every hour to eat, and not the hour from when he finished, the hour from when he started. So by the time he finished his nightly feeding to the point he wanted again was like 30 minutes, and so I wasn't able to fall asleep at that point, so I stayed up all night once again. So the nights where I'm up just all night and not consistently 3 hours like he normally is, those are rough. Does Warren have a personality yet? What are things he loves / hates? So by this point he is 3 weeks old. I wouldn't say he has much of a personality, but he definitely, like, I know things he likes and things he doesn't like. Like, he hates diaper changes because he hates being naked. He always needs to be clothed. He hates baths right now, which breaks my heart because I love giving him baths. And he's not very patient when he's hungry. Like, that's the only time he has a loud, unhappy cries, when he's hungry, and it's like right away. So he loves to be swaddled, which is nice. What else does he love? He loves tummy time, which not all babies do, but he does. He really enjoys tummy time, which is nice. And then he just loves to be held. He's content not being held most of the time, but he will sleep for forever if he's being held. Did you use everything you packed in your hospital bag? Not even close. And that's saying a lot because I packed hardly anything. Like, even after my video that I put out, I didn't even pack all that stuff. Like, I legit didn't pack hardly anything. We had one bag for all 3 of us, for me, Warren, and Brayden, one bag, because we hardly packed anything, and we didn't even bring it in until we were in the recovery room. And by then I was just, my mind was just elsewhere. So I really didn't use hardly anything in the bag. So where did his name come from? So his full name is Warren J. Kirby. Warren is a name that Brayden heard forever ago. I think he heard it from a book. And when we first found out we were pregnant, he said if it's a boy, it should be Warren. And I didn't like it at first. Well, I liked it, but I preferred other names. But by the time we had our gender reveal, Brayden literally said out loud, I know what his name is. As soon as we found out it was a boy, and I knew what name he was talking about, I'm like, actually, yeah, that fits. Like, Warren fits. And then Jay is his middle name, which is short for Jason, which is my dad's name. And growing up with all sisters, my dad was the only male really in my life that I grew up with, and I love my dad. I was always a daddy's girl growing up. And so I knew, I think I planned this out when I was like 10 or 11 years old, that my first son, his middle name was going to be Jay, after my dad. So I told that to Brayden even when we were dating, and he agreed. So that was always going to be, no matter what the first name was, the middle name was always going to be Jay. How long were two in labor? I think it's supposed to be, how long were you in labor for? Does it take as long as everyone says? That second question is a tricky one because everyone, again, is so different. But by the time I got checked into the hospital to the time he was born, was about 7 hours. So I got checked into the hospital at I started labor pains at like 3 a.m. but they weren't bad at all. Like, I was able to walk around and get stuff done around the house before we left. I didn't get checked in officially at the hospital till about 8 a.m. and by that point I was at a 4. And I just progressed very, very quickly, that by the time 3 o'clock came around, I was at a 10 and ready to push. And I think I pushed for only about 30 minutes and then he was born. So it was a very, very quick labor. I know some people who are in and out like that, and I know some people who are in labor for 30 hours. So it can be as long as everybody says yes. I lucked out and I had a very quick labor. It progressed very, very quickly for me. Okay, advice for newborn bedtime SOS. I'm looking for advice just as much as you are. No, I think I went into it thinking that there had to be specific things, like he had to be swaddled a certain way and he had to sleep a certain way. And even though so many people say yes to all those things, from what I've just been experienced, just do what works for you. Mom shaming is literally the most annoying thing on this planet, and I hate how people, even people without kids, mom shame, and it just drives me nuts just because they read things online and then they shame other people for doing things that they read not to do. But just do what works for you. He is not a bassinet sleeper. We tried and tried and tried and tried, and he will not sleep in his bassinet. I think we're going to keep trying as he gets older, but for now, even though I'm sure I'll get hate for it, we are bed sharing with him at the moment, because even though like he's in his own space, he's in between Brady and I, he doesn't roll yet, like he's just laying flat on his back in between us, and he sleeps really well when he's in the bed with us. I think just knowing we're right there next to him helps him sleep, and it's what works for us. And ever since we started doing that, he sleeps and wakes up every 30 hours to eat and falls immediately back to sleep and wakes up at like 7 or 8. So do what works for you. Don't listen to what everyone else has to say. That's my advice. I know you said you wanted to breastfeed. How's that going? So yes, I am breastfeeding, and it's going. It's working. I think I'm trying to boost my supply so we can start trying to get a freezer stash, because I have plenty of supply for what he needs. I just want extra so we can form a stash. But I will say, like all my life, knowing I wanted to be a mom, I was expecting to love breastfeeding and to love that moment with my baby. I don't love breastfeeding. It is tough, and I think the toughest part is knowing like when he's screaming and hungry in the middle of the night, you are the only one that can stay up with him and do that. And it can get frustrating, especially when he's on a growth spurt and wanting to eat constantly. But yeah, so I don't love it, but I feel like it's getting better. And for those who are not breastfeeding, don't you dare feel bad, because they claim it's natural. It is not natural. And I had so many nurses and doctors tell that to me, constantly remind me, like, if this doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and it's fine, because it is not natural. It's natural for him to like latch, but it's something that you have to adjust to. They say it takes a month to 2 months to even adjust to breastfeeding. So it's not natural, and it's hard, but I enjoy it. I don't hate it. It's just I don't love it as much as I thought. I know. Last one. I want all the tips and tricks and resources you think were helpful. As far as resources go, I think the most helpful resources for me was just listening to my friends who have had babies and just asking them questions. I had a couple of friends where I was just constantly texting them different questions throughout my entire pregnancy, and they were answering them mainly because like they said from the get-go, like, no question is TMI, and that was very helpful. Because you can only find, I feel like the stuff that I read online or whatever was just like overwhelming. So to talk to somebody else who's experienced it was way better than anything else, honestly. And I had a book that was more informational than like personal experiences. So although the information in the books and online were very helpful, I found it was more helpful to just talk to someone else about it and to see their experience first, so I was more prepared. So I don't really have any personal tips and tricks for you on the top of my head, but that's what helped me, was to talk to other people who experienced it. That's all the questions that were put in that were not repetitive questions. So thanks again to everyone who put one in. I hope this was helpful, at least in some way, to either new moms or people about to experience it or thinking about it. But that was just my personal experience. So thank you again to everyone who put in a question, and good luck to everyone out there. Honestly, I will add one last thing, is I loved pregnancy. I loved being pregnant to the point where I was never to the point where I felt ready to give birth. I was terrified, extremely terrified to give birth, to get the epidural, to get the aftermath, because the healing process took like a whole week till I could even sit without being in pain. I will put that, and that was rough. Like, I was not looking forward to any of it, but it really is not as bad as I built it up in my head to be. And it's not anything at all like the movies or the TV shows. Like, it really is not anything like that. Like, I built it up so much in my head that when I actually experienced it, it's now something I realized I could do it again. I'm not in any rush to do it again, but it really, your body's meant to do that and to go through that. Like, it's not something you need to stress over. And that's coming from someone who overly stresses on everything and overthinks everything, so take my word for it. But it really was, like, I hear people say it was a spiritual experience to them. Wasn't that way to me, but it wasn't also a terrible bad experience either. But I had a pretty simple, straightforward, easy birth. I did tear 2nd degree, but it wasn't, again, it wasn't as bad as people, like some people built it up to be and TV shows built it up to be. So if that's something you are stressing over like I was, just take a minute, take a step back, and just relax. Like, you've got this. But anyway, we love you, Kirby family. Thank you again for all the support and the love and the patience for when our videos are super spaced out. It's definitely tougher with a newborn, and when we have the energy to make the videos. But just know that we love you guys and we appreciate you all so much. So hopefully we'll catch you again next week.